Wow, this is great. So I've been doing this whole little bit here, realizing I didn't even have my timer on. I've been having some issues with the microphone, so hopefully everything is rolling good and great. Now, welcome back to Rob's Arcade. I'm your host, Mr. Rob French, and we are hanging out on this Nintendo Tuesday, taking a look at the Disney Afternoon collection. Not so much the games. I feel like we've already done a pretty decent run through and look at some of the gameplay featuring these Disney Afternoon titles of Capcom on the original Nintendo Entertainment System, spawning from the creation of Disney, but spanning from the late 80s all the way through the early 90s, mid-90s here. Some great classics featuring all of the great hits: DuckTales, Chip 'n Dale, Tailspin, even Darkwing Duck. It's amazing to think that they were still pumping out titles on the original Nintendo back in 93, and even up until 94 with Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers 2. I think at that point I was playing video games on my Sega CD. Now this is a great collection here. You can take a look at all of the different albums. You even have the music kind of set up in a CD format, so you can look at all the tracks. Go through each one here. Pretty awesome there. But I want to take a look at some of the other features here in the gallery while we talk about more so the Disney Afternoon cartoon collection, more so than the actual video games themselves, because there was really only two things that could get me to engage in that foot race home, if you will, and none of it was ever homework. It was either picking up where I left off on my favorite Sega Genesis video game, probably something like Mortal Kombat or Sonic CD, or perhaps something I had just picked up from the local Blockbuster or something. Actually, I didn't really have Blockbuster around where I lived. It was Video World and Movie Time. Very, I feel like, regional specific to where I lived. We had like a Video World and a movie gallery, and we would go rent these, these video games and stuff. And I kind of wanted to highlight some of this too and show you a little bit about like what we were given to kind of make these decisions. Some of the PR and some of the graphics and pics and videos that were kind of accessible to us at the time. Talk about my retro rewind videos, going to the video store, picking up these videos and these video games, and just basically making the call off of what was on the box. And so I kind of wanted to take a look at some of that today and kind of show you some of that as well. While I really talk about more of the shows, because outside of like Mortal Kombat and Sonic CD and some of those games that would get me to run home after school, the other piece was those like after school cartoons. And oddly enough, like not much has changed in my life in some 30 years since then, where those are the same things that like getting home, watching my new episode of like Peacemaker or The Last of Us or the new Alien Earth show, or even just catching up on the old X-Men series, or getting to hop on the sticks and play some Fortnite with my homies. Like those are the same things that really get me grabbing my bag and running out the door after work. So I really wanted to talk about, like I said, the cartoons. Very different also when I was growing up than it is laid out today. Like there was a very meaty schedule of animated entertainment in the hours after school and on the weekend mornings. And it was a great break. These were the shows, the things that we would talk about and engage, and this was our school bus fodder, if you will. But yeah, I just remember running home to catch episodes of the Disney afternoon lineup. There was quite a few different lineups. The Warner Brothers had a really cool lineup too with their like Looney Tunes, Animaniacs, Freakazoid. I believe Pinky and the Brain even got their own show at one point. Batman, the animated series, was a huge hit. It still really holds up to this day. And then the other side of that was the Disney animated lineup. They had a really cool lineup as well. And it really started actually with the Gummy Bears, oddly enough, which isn't really featured in a game here in this collection. I don't even know if they had a video game. But the Gummy Bears really, I think, was like one of the first animated shows that kind of kicked off that Disney afternoon animation spot. And I don't think it was long after that DuckTales debuted. And DuckTales was great. Like, there was nothing wrong with Gummy Bears, but I think it was like one of those, like, they kind of created their own characters. DuckTales was, riding on the skirt tails of the popularity of like Scrooge, Donald, and his nephews that was already established in those early Disney animated shorts. And now you had a whole universe with their adventures. They introduced characters like Launchpad McQuack. There were great science fiction and adventure pieces. They would go to space, and they would go to the mountains, and there were volcanoes, and there was witchcraft, and the Beagle Brothers, and just, it was, every episode was just, there was something else to do and something fun. What's great is there's a lot of talk on TikTok about people's favorite television theme songs, and I feel like, like Ninja Turtles is one that always pops into the mix. But the Disney lineup with, I'm actually watching some Darkwing Duck now, like the Darkwing Duck, Tailspin, Gummy Bears, DuckTales, Rescue, like every single theme song is just an absolute banger. So right from the get-go, as soon as the show came on, you were already pulled in, and then each one had these great adventures with these four here. They had the whole, what was it, like it wasn't the Boy Scouts, what were they in? Oh, they had like a handbook and everything, according to the so-and-so handbook. Well, that's going to kill me. But yeah, they had like a little handbook that they could reference with all those creators giving you all these cool characters that were in the show. I remember even had like a handbook they would like pull out, kind of help them on their adventures on what to do. I used to love that. Just when you thought, the adventures couldn't get any better, like there's no way that like anything can beat, DuckTales. He started introducing like Gizmo Duck and all these really cool ideas into DuckTales. They came up with the Chippendale Rescue Rangers, and it's like, I've had this conversation about like, I think like Pixar and Disney before, where you think they can't top what the original is, and I don't mean to say that like Rescue Rangers is better than Toy Story, or excuse me, DuckTales, but Pixar kind of did the same thing with like Toy Story, where each one that comes out strikes that same emotional chord. It's like you start to watch things like, you got Toy Story, there's like A Bug's Life, and it's like, all right, and then like, Finding Nemo comes out, and you're like, all right, man, like we get it, but like you just feel like there's just like something special about Toy Story. But then you watch these other movies and Moana and everything else, you're like, gosh, man, like every single one seems to hit that same nerve in the exact same way, but maybe just with a different tone or a different key. And that's kind of what the Disney afternoon lineup for me kind of started to do. Like, that they would introduce DuckTales, and I was like, wow, this is even a little bit better than Gummy Bears. And then Rescue Rangers and TaleSpin came along, and you're like, each one, you're just like, I can't get better than the last. I think I wound up liking TaleSpin even more so than really DuckTales or Rescue Rangers. But that was mainly because like that whole aviation piece to it. I think I just had like a huge love of airplanes when I was younger. So then after Rescue Rangers came out, I'm like, oh, this is such a cool idea. They hit me with TaleSpin, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And then Darkwing Duck was, coming along very shortly thereafter. And then I was hooked. I was like, I had to run home and catch this amazing hour block of Disney entertainment. And like I said, each one, I don't want to say was better than the one before, but it just added all these like levels of entertainment in a 2-hour block of Disney cartoons that in some way was more exciting, or gradually getting more exciting in 30-minute intervals. It's like that first 30 minutes was like, oh, this is great, I love DuckTales. And then these guys would pop on, and there was just something about, I think the thing with like Rescue Rangers was like everything was in this like miniaturized world, but like big, like their vehicle was like a bleach jug. It would, the wheels were buttons, and like there's this weird like everything that they had was kind of made out of like household objects, and there was just something about watching that and then going off and trying to make your own little vehicle out of things you could find around the house, or making a Chippendale bedroom with matchbox drawers and button clocks on the window, and like there was just something about that. Here we go, some TaleSpin, those cool little planes. I liked Darkwing, and I think I still remember explaining this to an uncle of mine back in the back in the 90s when this came on. I think he was like watching us one afternoon, and it was probably one of those things like, it was like, you're still watching this? Like I was probably like 14, 15 years old, still watching Darkwing Duck. And I think he was kind of like surprised that I was, on the way to getting my license and still really into this franchise. And I remember explaining it to him. It's not the uncle that lives with me. I have quite a few uncles. But I remember explaining it to B-Boy, as we would call him. What about Darkwing really stood out, and I was like, it's kind of like, I guess it was like, DuckTales did some cool superhero episodes. I feel like Rescue Rangers had some superhero episodes. There might even have been a superhero episode mixed into TaleSpin. But with Darkwing Duck, it was all superhero stuff every episode. I mean, it's like kind of like while I'm watching it now, I love the superhero stuff, and the theme song was amazing. The costume design was like absolutely incredible, still is to this day. And yeah, there was just something about like every episode was superhero stuff. Even at 14, 15, I mean, I was like really still like my comic book collection and hunger was like in overdrive. But yeah, I still remember this day, like, just explain, like, he's like, wow, like, cause I remember, like, I think my sister and my cousin were there too, and like, they really could care less about it being on, but like, I was really like, no, everyone be quiet, like, I'm trying to watch Darkwing Duck. Just, like, I was like watching it like it was, the new episode of like Andor or something. But this is kind of here too what I was talking about before with like these retro Rewind weekends when you would go to the video store and go to rent a video game. This is what we would have to look at to make our decision. Like they would have the game boxes on the shelf. You could kind of pick it up and read the back and look at the pictures. Look at those little screens on the back there and kind of see what the gameplay might kind of sort of look like. Cute little Game Boy boxes, cardboard. I don't think Nintendo ever did. I'm trying to think now. I'm looking back and thinking about it. I think GameCube was the first time plastic boxes might have been introduced into DS and GameCube. I think was the first time. I feel like everything Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Game Boy Color, even Game Boy Advance. And Nintendo 64, everything was cardboard boxes. Everything. It's crazy to think about. Like PlayStation, it's always been plastic. They were first little, like, what are they called? Diamond cases, CD clear case. And everything comes in like a DVD Blu-ray kind of case. Sega did plastic. That's interesting. I feel like it's weird too, like this day afternoon really could have capitalized more on this. Like there was no connection between Darkwing and Tailspin. They didn't really, I don't think, exist in the same universe. Also because I think like Tailspin, I think exists maybe in a different time period. But you could definitely see that between DuckTales and Darkwing Duck, that there was a connection in that universe. And it would have been really cool if it had been something as they went on through the years, if it had been something they could have really, you know, kind of capitalized on and maybe done some crossover type episodes. In the recent years, DuckTales has made a huge resurgence on the Disney Channel and Disney Plus. The new episodes are actually really good, really fun. I do enjoy watching the new DuckTales. It doesn't hold a candle quite to the original, but it is fun and entertaining, and they have kind of capitalized more on that idea that DuckTales and Darkwing Duck exist in the same universe. But I would have loved to see like a Disney afternoon movie, you know, where the Rescue Rangers team up with the kids, you know, Huey, Dewey, and Bluey or something like that, or Launchpad maybe finds the old Sea Duck from Tailspin, or, you know, because I guess Tailspin would have been in an earlier time period, Something Blue finds a treasure, maybe is discovered later on by Scrooge McDuck. Kit's still around, but he's an old man or something like that. You know, there's just so many cool things I feel like they could have done, and we never got a chance to see that. I feel like that's really everything Disney does now, is how does the, you know, Little Mermaid tying into Frozen, and all of these things kind of have these little cool Easter egg moments. There's little tie-ins that kind of connect everything from WALL-E to Toy Story to even that movie Brave. And it'd been really cool to see if like they could have done something with the Disney afternoon as well. But yeah, I just always loved running home, watching episodes of DuckTales, seeing what kind of adventures they were going to get into. And as, like I said, it was just a really cool thing where it's just like, oh man, I remember, like, oh cool, DuckTales, like this is amazing, this is way better than Gummy Bears. And as each one came out, just like thinking like, oh, there's no way I'm going to like, because you kind of started to think like, oh, well, they're just going to make another show or another series because they want to, you know, capitalize on the success that DuckTales is making. But it wasn't just a matter of like putting another 30-minute, you know, time slot together. Like they really put some thought into the characters, the world. And I think that's why they made such great video games as well. You know, because of all of that. So, anyway, then we go ahead and kind of wrap this up. And I've been wanting to do this, wanted to put this together here for a little bit, just simply because as we head back to school, you know, I start to think myself of what it was like for me. And, you know, I still remember, like I said, being in, like, 6th grade, running home to catch Disney's afternoon programming. And I look around and at some of these, like, middle school kids and stuff that I work with today, and there's not anything really like that. Most of the animation that they are running home to go see is like it's a little bit more violent. You know, it's more like Japanese anime fighting and things blowing up and exploding. And there's not like this 2-hour block of, you know, wholesomeness that we used to get with DuckTales and, you know, Chippendales, Rescue Rangers. And I think there's just like, there's something missing to that, and I just kind of wanted to talk about it and highlight it for a little bit here on my channel. You know, oftentimes I'll get into talking about gameplay and just kind of showing you what some of these games look like that I used to play back in the day. But I really get a chance to show you some of the artwork and talk about some of the properties and franchises that helped inspire these video games. And I think that kind of helps to add a little bit of you know, context to all of this, because again, you look at the gameplay in some of my other videos where we're actually taking a look at like Chip and Dale and DuckTales, and it's a little choppy, a little funky, it's a little rough around the edges. But I think when you get to know the material that inspires it, it helps to put a little bit more charm to it, and I won't say it makes it any really better, but I think it can help you appreciate the game a bit more if you can kind of understand and see how important the whole Disney Afternoon franchise was to people like me and people who grew up in that whole time period. Like I said, there was rarely a time that I would miss an episode of TaleSpin. And the cool thing was, like, I remember a lot of the times too when they would introduce these shows, it wasn't like they just, you know, kicked off on a Monday afternoon with a brand new episode of this new show, Darkwing Duck. It usually started off on like a Monday, and it would go all week long. Like, it would start on Monday, it would be a continued episode to Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, I mean all the way through the week, and you would have to watch all week to find out exactly like the origin story of Chip and Dale, or how Kit and Baloo got together. And I kind of like started this whole thing like, I can't miss an episode, I can't miss an episode, I gotta tune in. And like I said, each episode just got cooler and cooler, and it really like led to that idea of like, man, I got to get home and really I really can't afford to miss an episode of Darkwing Duck, or I can't afford to miss an episode of DuckTales. I gotta see what happens next. So they were kind of smart with how, I feel like a lot of cartoons would do that. G.I. Joe, Transform, like they would have these like week-long episodes. It was like I said, that would have been a great thing to have, like these cool crossover week-long mega episodes, kind of like what they do with like the Arrowverse and the CW and all the everything now was kind of tied in and kind of bleeds in together. So anyway, thank you for tying in and bleeding into my time here on Rob's Arcade and just kind of hanging out and letting me talk about these really cool characters and franchises that I really enjoyed as a youth, and still, like I said, enjoy to this day. I'm gonna go finish my coffee and watching some more episodes of Darkwing Duck. I hope you enjoyed this episode of my show. If you did, please like, share, subscribe, leave a comment below. You don't want to miss any upcoming episodes. And if you're a first-time offender here, make sure you go back through my library. Share some videos and check out some that you might have missed before. Leave a comment. Love to hear from you guys. Take care of yourself. Take care of each other. And until next time, don't spend that quarter anywhere else. See you later.